back to your regularly scheduled mediocrity programming. What's happening? Mediocre people of YouTube. I hope this camera's not all blurry. No, it's not bad. My camera gets dirty. Oh, I don't want to get copywritten strike. Turn off the radio before that happens. Oh my gosh. So I had to make a video today because, I get questions about Democrats in this country, and as you know, I'm not a full-blown, I'm not a Republican for sure, but I do agree that Democrats in this country have gone way too far, and they're people say, well, they're not communists, they're socialists. Well, what does socialism lead to every time? So the topic of Gavin Newsom came up, and I said, that dude is a fucking communist. And this dude who claims he's a Mr. Independent, he goes, you tell me how he's a communist, and then fucking goes on to insult me and call me a fucking Trump tard and everything else before I could even tell him how I think Gavin Newsom's a communist. Well, Gavin Newsom is what? The leader of the state of California, right? If you look at the Democrats in the West, especially, now you go outside of California, and it's not that way, not completely. There's Democrats in Arizona and Texas and in the South, and they're not quite lunatics like in California. Okay, let me get back to it. California Democrats as a whole, including the nutbag Nancy Pelosi, have been telling us for decades the Republicans are going to turn this country into a place where there is no longer a middle class. You'll either be rich or poor. They've been telling us this for decades. That's what the Republican Party is going to do to this country. And then now, present day, 2025, look at the state of California. Give you a little minute to think about it there. You either have to be very wealthy or very fucking poor, because just a shitbox of a house costs you $4 or $5 million, and that's on the conservative end. Gentrification that took place in places like that used to be war zones are now fetching $4 million for just a shitbox house. I'm talking about a regular old middle class 3-bedroom home, $4 million. And if you want something nicer than that, you're in the $12 to $15 million range. Then you have a class of citizens that are extremely fucking poor. And these are usually the people that they tell us, oh, well, they're the immigrants. They're the immigrants, okay? So all of you immigrants, including the illegals who have come into this country, you need to understand that that's what your Democrat Party thinks of you. You are the people who clean their toilets, because they've come out and said it. Who's going to cut the grass? Who's going to clean our homes? Who's going to do this? They're not thinking of you as maybe you're a fucking Einstein coming into this country who's going to cure cancer. They don't think of you like that, which maybe you are. But even if you are, all they're worried about is making sure their landscaping's done. They don't want to hear about how smart you are and how you have this idea to cure cancer. So you need to, all you immigrants in California who think the Democrats are your friend, you need to just go and look. I mean, they've been completely open about it. Who's going to do the landscaping? Who's going to clean the homes? Who's going to do this? So they have built a state where there is no longer a middle class. It's either wealthy or poor. And that's terrible, because, I've looked at poor neighborhoods in Detroit my entire life. And that shit is fucking generational. And it's weird, because I have a friend who lives in the hood, right? In fact, maybe I'm down here right now. Maybe we'll take a ride past his house and talk to him. He's a good dude, man. And he worked many, many years, and he always promised his wife that, when he retired, they'd move somewhere to like Livonia or Southfield. And he has the means to do it, but he's never left that neighborhood, ever. And then he'll say things like, well, I've been in this home since I was 6 months old. And dude, yeah, okay, but you live in a neighborhood where you can't leave your house. You got to always make sure somebody's home, because if you don't, you're going to get fucking robbed by your own neighbors. He's told me about it. He can't go on vacation. He can't even go to the store without making sure somebody's home, because your own neighbors will fucking rob you. And like I said, he has the means to move out of that place. There's been a few times where, and I don't want to put his personal business on the street, but just say what it is. Him and his wife have gotten into it, and he's like, man, please show me how to look for a house in Southfield. And I showed him, here, look, here's the, all these homes within your price range. And in the end, he's still living in that neighborhood. Why? I don't know. I can't figure it out. Why you would want to live that way is, there's no way. There's no way. That's why I've said there's areas of Detroit that have really cleaned up, and people are moving back in, and they're really nice houses and everything. But then they realize they actually have to live there, where, you have to make sure somebody's home at all times, because you will get robbed. They will rob you. Or, the other thing is, where are you going to go grocery shopping? Because there's no grocery stores. There's like 2 grocery stores, 2 decent grocery stores in the entire city of Detroit. And then you want to have kids, right? Where are they going to go to school? Because if you can't afford to send them to charter school, you're not going to send them to Detroit Public, because fuck that. Yeah, we could have jumped off here and went and see my man Howard, but I'm not going to do that today because I don't feel like stopping. And if I stop and see him, we'll be talking for the next 2-3 hours together. I love that guy. I miss him all the time. I need to stop and see him when I have a minute, when I have some time. But, the anger, and I've said this before, the anger coming out of people on the left, or people who just have TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, and I thought I'd never say that, but it's true. All they know is Trump bad. That's all they know. And it's like, well, what was the other choice? Harris. And then that choice was, you're voting for a Democrat Party who hid the fact that the President of the United States for 4 years didn't know which way was up. Now, we all kind of knew it, but it was confirmed, when the debate happened. And it was sad. And it was dangerous. And it made our country look weak. And yes, I am glad that they closed the border off. I'm glad that people are not getting into this country illegally. Because let's face it, it's pretty easy to come into this country. And if you're coming in here illegally, there's a reason for that. Okay? It's pretty easy to come into this country. You can come into this country on vacation. You come in on a work visa, stay for a year, and they ask you, well, what's your deal? And I really like it here. And, well, if you're, you don't have any kind of criminal record or anything back home, well, okay, get you on a path to citizenship. I mean, it's relatively fucking easy, right? It's not a big fucking deal. So if you're coming into the United States illegally, there must be some type of reason for that. Yes, I'm glad the police have their morale back. Their morale. I'm glad the police can hold their head up and be a police officer and hold their head up. Now, I know we have some bad police out there, and we've got to figure that one out, because some of these police officers are just off the hook, and I think a lot of it has to do with the shortage of police officers, the shortage of them in the nation, because people don't want to, even the cops who would be good cops don't want to be cops, because they get involved in some shit, and then they get accused of some shit, and the next thing they know, they're being charged with some shit. So no, I'm not 100% in support of the current president, President Trump. I do not support 100% of what he's doing, but I do support the things he ran on, which was making the border safe, making this country safer. I don't know what is going to happen with this Russia-Ukraine thing. I think President Trump said it best when he said, you're gambling with World War III. And I think that's a good way to say it, because if we can't get this resolved, and we shouldn't have to get this resolved, the United States should not have to resolve issues between other countries. These other countries should resolve them between each other. Why the United States always has to get involved and end up pouring money into your shithole of a country and helping you to save your country, and then you don't give a shit about it anyway. But the problem is that if Russia, Ukraine really get into it, Europe's going to back them, the United States is going to back them, and then we're going to be at war with Russia. And guess what happens when we go to war with Russia? We end up in war with China because China's going to back Russia. It will be fucking World War III. And there's no reason for it. Why can't we just get the shit fixed? Why do a bunch of people have to get killed? Why do a bunch of people have to fucking die before we can fix it? And then you know what? In the end, they're just going to talk it out and figure it out, and it's going to be done. So why not just do that in the first place instead of sending a bunch of fucking young kids to get killed? This shit, man, obviously it touches a nerve with me because, you know, that's what we're doing. We're asking a bunch of young kids to go over here and defend this nation. And in the end, you know, just like Iraq. Anyway, yeah, I do believe that there's a huge part of the Democrat Party that is a bunch of communists, basically. And you'll say, no, they lean towards socialism. But then, like I said, socialism always leads to communism, no matter what. You know, I'm all about free markets. And obviously, there you go. You know, there we can start having a conversation about the things I don't agree with Trump doing. But at the same time, I'm not talking about tariffs because I think he's negotiating tariffs with the United States. And, you know, right now the United States needs that money. We need to balance a budget, for God's sake. I haven't had a balanced budget since Clinton. I knew nothing was going to take place with the meeting between him and Putin, because the reason I knew nothing was going to get resolved is because Hillary Clinton, just days before that, said something about, you know, if President Trump were the architect of peace between Russia and Ukraine, I would personally nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, I mean, basically that's Hillary Clinton saying over my dead body. So I knew nothing was going to get resolved. I don't know. I don't even know how to resolve that. I have no, you know, obviously I'm not privy to the things Hillary Clinton's privy to, or, you know, all these politicians, especially the president. But what I will say is I will direct you to, and I will leave a link in the comment section or in the description of this video, to Bill Mahers' book report on his visit to the White House. And Bill Maher, as you know, is a Democrat. And Bill Maher, you know, he is what he is, but, you know, I think he's coming to grips now with, it's not, he hasn't changed, the party's changed. And the party has become a disgrace. And for a party to cover up the fact that the sitting president of the United States did not know which way was up for his entire administration, I don't know how I can vote for a Democrat again. And I can't vote independent because that's just another vote for the other guy that I don't want. So, you know, what was the choice? It's the same thing happened here in Michigan with our current governor. We didn't have a choice. It was either retard or even more retarded. So, you know, you take the less of two evils, right? You know, a lot of these people, they just, you know, they're just so bitter. They're so bitter. It doesn't matter if Trump came to their home and dropped $1 million on their doorstep. They would find a way to be bitter about it, and just, it's craziness. These people are out of their fucking minds with this shit. It's amazing to me. And then they'll turn it back on you and tell you how, you know, it's your fault this shit's going on. You know, it's people like me, it's my fault that they're so angry and screaming at me and everything else. Crazy, manipulative bullshit. That's what I'm tired of today, and I'll be tired of it tomorrow, and we'll see if I make a video or not. Peace out.